With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey. This is a bunch of stuff, deal.
What does that mean, a bunch of stuff?
Well, it means it's simply inaccurate.
It's Irish.
Exactly, it is. We Irish call it malarkey.
Thanks for the translation.
No, we Irish call it malarkey.
You know what this is? Yeah, and I reserve this word for those rare instances when it's truly deserved. This is malarkey.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
Direct from the King Spring Studios in beautiful Smyrna, Georgia. This is a bunch of malarkey. Now, here's your host, the incredible Charlie McMahon.
Thank you to the legendary Scott Shannon, and thank all of you for joining us for another episode of A Bunch of Malarkey, our halfway through 2019, our midway point of the year edition of the show. Thank you all for tuning in last week. We had another record-setting week, and we had our best month ever. We're closing in on full 10 months of the show, so we're coming up on our year anniversary this August, and every month our listenership has increased. So I want to thank you all for being a part of this and contributing every week and participating on social media, voting for the Mutant of the Week, and really engaging with the show. So I can't thank you all enough. So like I said, halfway through 2019, if you could believe that, in the blink of an eye, we are halfway to 2020. As you could see in the news, all this political stuff getting underway. And so this is your escape from all of that, folks. So you're tired of all the debates and the nonstop bickering back and forth. Yeah, this is why we have this show, A Bunch of Malarkey, to get away from all of that. So we're approaching 4th of July this week, Independence Day. And with that comes fireworks, folks. Now, if you live in a state like I do, where the laws have changed over the years, you can basically buy anything you want here as far as fireworks. In 2015, they changed the laws here, and the laws are ridiculous here. You can legally use fireworks any day of the year. The state of Georgia rules between 10 a.m. and midnight. Now, some local townships have cut that back to 9 p.m. on non-holidays, but on certain holidays, you can shoot them off until midnight, which 4th of July is one of them, Memorial Day, because there's nothing like celebrating people who have passed and given their lives for the country by shooting off explosions and gunpowder until midnight on Memorial Day. 4th of July, Labor Day. Yeah, nothing like honoring those who sacrificed their lives in factories and gave us all better working conditions by lighting off mortars 10 feet from your neighbor's house. New Year's Eve, you can do it till 1 in the morning here in Georgia. But I like this, folks. Now, you can sit there, you know, in these subdivisions here in Georgia, the houses are 20 feet away from each other. Yeah, we have nice backyards and everything, but the sides of the houses, you're right next door to each other. So you have these people blowing off fireworks, 20 feet from your house, big explosions, and that's okay with the politicians. You're allowed to do that. But don't shoot them off. Here's where you can't shoot them off. Within 100 yards of electrical plants, which, okay, we don't want to knock out the grid. Water treatment plants, okay, we don't want any shit in the water. We have enough problems with our water system around the country. Water waste treatment plants. Gas stations, that's obvious, but you still see some mutants smoking at gas stations. Refineries. Electrical substations. Here's one I don't understand. Near jails. So you want the prisoners to get a good night's sleep, because after all, they got to get up and go to work in the morning. But it's okay on a Thursday night when people have to get up the next day. Not everybody has the July 5th off, okay? People have to get up for work the next day. It's okay to shoot fireworks till midnight, 1 in the morning on 4th of July, 10 feet from your neighbor. But don't do it near the jail, because we don't want to keep them up. Helipads, hospitals, nursing homes, and other healthcare facilities, you're not allowed within 100 yards. Within any park or historical site. So these are the rules here. Basically, don't shoot them anywhere. We don't want you anywhere with these fireworks except 10 feet from your neighbor. So that's big. So I think we should all gather up truckloads of fireworks, find out where all these politicians live, lower the lift gate at 11:30 at night, and give them a taste of their medicine and see how that's working out for them. Just absurd. I don't have anything. People want to celebrate 4th of July. again, I'm not going to rain on anybody's parade or say people shouldn't be allowed to celebrate the way they want to. But consideration, folks. You have veterans out there with PTSD. You have animals that get scared. Show a little, courtesy for your neighbors. You're not the only person, on the block. Don't be an asshole, in other words. Celebrate 9, 10 o'clock when the sun goes down. Put on a little show in your backyard and then call it quits. Don't be annoying the shit out of everybody till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and make people have to call the police. So, as a kid, up in New York, and I believe it's still like that up in New York, most fireworks are illegal up there. I think you're allowed to have sparklers or little shit like that. But you couldn't have firecrackers and M80s and all this other stuff. But as you know, my dad worked for a supermarket chain, and he would get truckers coming in from all over the country, from the South, and they would bring, fireworks across state lines. And my dad would always get his hands on these fireworks, and he wasn't a big fireworks guy, so every once in a while he would shoot a couple of firecrackers off in the backyard. Then he would take these giant paper bags full of fireworks and put them in that shed I told you guys about a couple of weeks ago, that bungalow that we had in the back, and they would sit out there. So if my mother came across them in our shed clean out in the first week of July, that's usually when we cleaned out the shed, the first couple of weeks in July, right around 4th of July, she would end up throwing them out. So I knew that a lot of the kids in the neighborhood had an interest in fireworks. So as a side hustle, growing up, my brother and I used to take those bags of fireworks and sell them to the kids in the neighborhood. We were like fireworks dealers, because my dad would put them in that shed and forget about them, and a year would go by, and then we'd stumble across them right before 4th of July when the demand was high, and we'd put $40, $60 in our pocket. Back in 1982, that was a lot of money for a kid to have. So, we'd go to the gas station and, load up on candy and pizza. We were living like kings every year, the first couple of weeks of July, end of June, beginning of July, because we were selling all the fireworks my dad had stocked from the year before that he forgot about. So that was always fun. We didn't have any interest in shooting them off ourselves, my brother and I, but we always used to take those and sell them to the... I brought this up. He didn't really remember that, but I remember that clearly, that we used to sell these and, $20, $40, $60 in our pocket. 1982, we were living like kings. So that's my quick fireworks story. So if you're out there, folks, and again, enjoy the holiday, barbecue, go in the pool if you want to risk that, the beach, wherever you are, enjoy the fireworks, done by professionals. If you feel you have to be that guy, just be careful. And most of all, don't be a mutant. Be considerate of your neighbors. So that's all I have to say about fireworks. That's enough, right? So speaking of mutants.
Mutant of the Week.
We had a pretty decisive victory last week as our floaty fucker, the guy who had sex with pool floaties, he had over 75 of them in a bag, and when he was caught with them that he stole from people's yards, he told cops that he has sex with pool floaties rather than raping women. What a nice guy. He beat Coach Crank, the guy who was training an attack squirrel by giving it methamphetamine, by a score of 58 to 42%. So our winner is the floaty fucker with 58% of the vote, and he will be our mutant of the week until he is dethroned by one of these two colorful characters. And I have to say, folks, I don't do this on purpose. They're both out of Florida this week. So every week, I should just call it, my wife said we should call it the Florida mutant of the week because so many of them tend to be from Florida. So our first one, we have to go to North Lauderdale, Florida, not Fort Lauderdale, North Lauderdale, Florida, where a homeowner, he was shocked after a man was caught on video defecating in his driveway, then leaving the mess and the shirt that he used to wipe himself with behind. Homeowner Wilton Thomas was at work. His Ring camera captured a green car pulled into his driveway. In the video, the driver opens the door, takes off his shirt, and stoops down to relieve himself in Mr. Thomas's driveway. Thomas said, "I know when it comes time for you to go, you gotta go." But he could have driven himself right toward the left in the fence toward the coconut tree and did what he had to do there. That wouldn't have been a problem. But in my driveway? Thomas says when he got home, it was too late to take care of the mess right away, so he waited till Sunday morning. Imagine what that smelled like, festering pile of shit in your driveway in Florida all day long. He said, I went out in the hot sun, I scraped it up, poured it into a bag, I poured bleach, and then I hosed and washed the whole driveway off. Thomas says he's ready to put the situation behind him, but he does want an apology from the person responsible for the defecation. Knock and say, man, you know what? I had an emergency. I have nowhere to go, and this is where I had to do what I had to do and apologize, Thomas said. According to WPLG-TV, the Broward County Sheriff's Office is investigating the incident and trying to identify the man. So that's our first mutant. Let's call him the driveway defecator, our first mutant nominee out of North Lauderdale, Florida. So, folks, you can't make this shit up, literally. It's always out of Florida. So that's our first mutant nominee. And our second one also comes from the Sunshine State, where Austin Hatfield looks, judging from his Facebook page, to be really into snakes. But that love for snakes had a consequence. He was taken to Tampa General Hospital to treat injuries caused by a 4-foot water moccasin he had caught on a trail by his house. All right, somebody makes a mistake, they catch a snake, and it bites him. But this gets more interesting, folks. He kept the water moccasin as a pet and felt it necessary to kiss it on occasion. He kept track of how many times he got his face close and kissed the snake. It had reached 12 times before the snake finally bit him, according to his friend who witnessed the attack. Hatfield went to kiss the snake for the 13th time, that lucky number 13, that was kept in a pillowcase before he ran out of the room screaming, "Hospital, hospital, now, now." As the law stands, it is illegal to keep a wild moccasin without a permit in Florida. Hatfield faced misdemeanor charges and possibly up to 60 days in jail. A spokesperson from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission reminded everyone, just like any animal in Florida, if they pose a danger to people, we recommend that you stay a safe distance. So that's our second mutant nominee, the snake smooching simpleton. So we got a heavyweight battle. We got the driveway defecator, and we've got the snake smooching simpleton. So for our main topic today, if you remember, if you're an avid listener, which many of you are, have stuck with the show right from the beginning, and we get new listeners. And if you're a new listener and hadn't listened to our Halloween edition back in October, back on that show of A Bunch of Malarkey, episode of A Bunch of Malarkey, Jen and I, we spoke about our paranormal experiences and our beliefs in the paranormal. We got a lot of feedback about that show, both from paranormal believers and skeptics. The paranormal is a topic I'm still somewhat skeptical about, even though I've had a few paranormal encounters, including a phone call from my grandfather a week after he passed away, an encounter with an ex-girlfriend at an ex-girlfriend's house with a ghost named Teddy, who was a friend of her dad's who died in the Korean War. I was told after the fact, after the ghost tormented me that night, I got up the next morning and the father said, "Oh, that's just Teddy. He didn't know who you were." So I dealt with Teddy the ghost. And a recent home security video in my home from 2018 showing what appears to be some paranormal energy in my foyer. So paranormal activity is something I've always been fascinated by. I mean, seriously, folks, who doesn't wonder what happens to us after we pass away? It's something that people have talked about since the beginning of time. You know, do we just die? Does energy take on a different form? Do we come back as spirit? Do we go to heaven? Do we go to hell? You know, after a year of this podcast, I don't think I'm going to hell, but I'm probably going to be lingering for a few thousand years waiting to get into heaven. But that's that's a topic for another show. You know, years ago, just the thought of paranormal activity, watching certain movies or thing would scare the hell out of me. I'm not going to lie. But after having a couple of these encounters, it doesn't scare me as much as it used to because, you know, it might be a deceased relative trying to contact us. It might be something positive. But, of course, if we're talking about negative energy or a negative spirit, who isn't scared of that? A few days ago, I had the opportunity to chat with Todd Daring. Now, Todd's a paranormal investigator on the Amazon Prime Video docuseries Haunted State. Todd and I talked about the show, the different equipment they use, his beliefs and encounters with the paranormal, both while filming the series and in his personal life. And I shared some of my paranormal encounters with Todd. I enjoyed the conversation so much, and I hope you do as well. So here, without further ado, is my interview with Todd Dering from the docuseries on Amazon Prime Video, Haunted State. If you're looking for something interesting to watch on one of the many streaming services, definitely check out Haunted State on Amazon Prime Video. Whether you are a true believer in the paranormal or a diehard skeptic, Haunted State will hold your interest and make even those diehard skeptics think twice about the existence of spirit, life, or energy. Haunted State started as an American documentary film series created by Michael Brown that began with the 2014 film Haunted State: Whispers from History Past. It was followed up by Haunted State: The Theater of Shadows in 2017, which is also available on Amazon Prime Video. And here in 2019, there is Haunted State, Season 1. This multi-part docuseries, filmed over 1 year, follows a team of filmmakers as they uncover historic elements behind various locations and investigate their paranormal idiosyncrasies. That team of filmmakers and paranormal investigators includes my next guest, Todd Dering. Welcome, Todd.
You did that so well. Did you have that written down?
I had a few notes written down. Always got to be prepared, right, Todd?
Yes, I totally understand. Thanks for having me on, Charlie.
Well, thank you for joining us. It's a topic I covered a little bit on Halloween. You know, in the podcast community, you have to do a little something for Halloween, and people took an interest to it. So after watching your movie last year, or 2 years ago, Haunted State: Theater of Shadows, I started watching the episodes again this year. I think there's been 4 out so far, and really enjoy it, Todd.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that. I really am, because putting it out there, you never know what you're going to get. You mentioned you've got people who are believers in paranormal, and you've got people who are diehard skeptics. And what we're really trying to do is kind of serve both those communities, and that's a tough line to walk.
Sure.
So I appreciate the fact that you enjoy watching it.
So a quick overview, Todd, for the listeners that are maybe unfamiliar with Haunted State that haven't seen it yet. Could you give us a quick overview of the series for the 2019 series?
Yeah, the 2019 series, last summer, our group got together, Michael Brown, Angela Olsen, Ann Benson, and myself, and kind of taking off from where the movies started, Haunted State, we decided to try a docuseries and to get out there as filmmakers and do a lot of the same stuff we did in the movies, but shorten up our presentation and see several locations over the course of like 8 or 10 episodes.
Right, and some beautiful locations.
Man, I'll tell you what, that was tough to go out there and film those and want to walk away. But yeah, some beautiful locations. We really focus on Door County in this series.
Right.
We do get outside Door County a little bit, but Door County in Wisconsin it's where everybody goes on vacation. People around the United States kind of know it as the vacation spot of Wisconsin. So it's beautiful. We get to go to islands and actually get away from the mainland of Wisconsin for a bit. We get to spend some time in lighthouses, which is one of my favorite things.
Right.
And we have a few drinks along the way, too, which is always fun.
I'll tell you, I was jealous, seeing all that scenery. When I watched Making a Murderer on Netflix, I said, I'm never going to Wisconsin. Now I want to go.
Well, we've had a history of some stuff go on here, and from Ed Gein and others. So it's an interesting state, and at one point somebody said, "Is Wisconsin the most haunted state?" I don't know if it is, but we're still out there trying to figure out what's out there. Now,
Todd, there are a lot of paranormal investigative shows out there and ghost hunting shows. How is Haunted State different from the others? What separates you from the other run-of-the-mill paranormal investigative type show?
Well, one of the things is it's our show. It's Michael Brown's show.
Right.
So he can produce it the way he wants. We don't have to worry about a network telling us, listen, you gotta make this scarier. Listen, you gotta make this stuff look like it's real. We go out there, we film, and you get to actually see what it's like to a certain extent to go out in the field and investigate. as much as I enjoy doing it, there's a lot of time sitting around waiting to see what happens.
Sure.
And trying different things to try and get some sort of communication or something to happen. And so what we try to do is we try to really capture that moment and then put it out there for the viewers to decide whether or not they think something might be haunted or they think something might be not haunted. But it really is just, it's really taking the actual experience and putting it out there and letting you decide.
Well, I think that's what I like most about it, because I've seen some other paranormal investigative shows, and they try to force you to think a certain way, like, oh, did you hear that, or this was that. You guys put out the evidence, and like you said, you let us decide. And I think that's what I like the most about the show.
Well, and the other thing, too, is a lot of this is just thought process. It's, there's some scientific relevance to it, but some of it is just, how does it make you feel? What are your beliefs on it?
Right.
And so it's really hard to force that on anybody because everybody has different beliefs.
Sure.
Whether it be religion or about ghosts or about spirits or energy. So instead of trying to say, listen, it's A, B, and C, we try and say, listen, it's kind of in the alphabet someplace. It's kind of here. What do you think? And
Right.
kind of let everybody else make up their own minds.
Now, you come from a radio background in Korea. How did you become involved with Haunted State and paranormal investigation?
Well, this goes back I don't even know what year it was, 77, 78, maybe before that. Amityville Horror came out when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing scared me more, and it's still one of my favorite movies of all time.
I grew up 10 minutes from there, Todd. 10 minutes from
Did you
Amityville.
really?
Yeah, I grew up on Long Island, 10 minutes from Amityville.
So, what time of life was that as far as years, decades? What decade was that, Charlie?
As far as the Amityville Horror?
No, for you. When did you grow up there?
Oh, I was born in 71, and I lived there till 2011. I moved here to Georgia 3 days after my 40th birthday.
So you were actually right there when.
Oh yeah, as a kid, I remember seeing all these reporters trying to spend the night in Amityville Horror. It was scared the hell out of us as kids.
Absolutely, and I mean, here I was in Wisconsin growing up with the same thing. But I remember the kind of the side story of Ed and Lorraine Warren doing the investigation there,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know that was the exact moment, but at some point I went, there must be a way to figure this all out. And that sparked my interest. And then as you go through life, then shows like Ghost Hunters come out on Sci-Fi,
Sure.
Ghost Adventures and stuff like that. And all of a sudden you realize that people are beginning to take it a little bit more seriously.
Right.
And I had an opportunity. I was working actually with Michael Brown in radio. You mentioned Halloween. We did a special show with a paranormal group at a quote-unquote haunted house in the town that we were working in.
Wow.
And it kind of stemmed off from there. I think it was 2005 or something when we started. And just over time, we decided to take this to the next level and start doing movies. And Michael, being the producer and director, really is the springboard of all this kind of stuff. I just get to go along to have fun.
Well, that's awesome that you had such an interest in it at a young age, and now you're actually doing it. That's amazing.
Well, like you, scared the crap out of me. Right? I mean, but again, it was really, haunted house stories as kids, always there.
Right.
But when you start thinking, I wonder how much of this could actually be true.
True, sure.
That's the interesting thing to me.
So before becoming involved with Haunted State and actually going out and doing the investigating, I know you said, you watched like the Amityville Horror and you were aware of different things, but were you a skeptic when it came to the paranormal, or had you encountered any personal paranormal experiences before actually going out in the field and taking part in Haunted State?
I'm still a skeptic.
You're still a skeptic?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've had situations where something happened right in front of me, and I still try to come up with another explanation.
Sure.
For it, which I think makes me one of those people that kind of walks the line on it. I was a huge skeptic. I wanted to believe, obviously. Everybody wants to believe that maybe someday they'd be able to talk to a loved one from the other side or whatever. But nothing ever happened to me. And even in the first couple of movies, I really didn't have a ton of experiences that directly affected me. And as I've grown in my work in this field, I guess I've become to realize that sometimes it's about your own energy and the people around you.
Right.
And there's one thing that I really enjoy about our team now is I think our energy is right to help other energy happen. And I think that's a really important part of investigation. But yeah, huge skeptic. And I'll tell you that, like, the first time my eyes really opened up, I was in a house that I owned. Nothing had ever happened. It was a house that was built in like 1923.
Okay.
Older house, beautiful house. Nothing ever happened. Huge house. Had done the first movie, and I had just purchased some new quote-unquote ghost hunting equipment.
Okay.
And I wanted to try it out. So I had a friend of mine come over. And I would consider her to be kind of an open energy kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of messed around with it a little bit, and nothing was happening. And I said, well, I'm going to go do some dishes because this is boring me. Well, she kept going, and before you knew it, she was starting to get responses on the equipment.
Oh, wow.
And when we wrapped up the whole thing, we were talking about something else, and as we were sitting there, upstairs where nobody actually lived upstairs at the time, footsteps down the hall and a door slammed.
He woke something up.
Well, and then after that, it happened quite frequently in that house.
Oh, wow.
So again, I think if we as human beings don't believe that there's something other than what we can see and touch and smell and taste, if we think this is all there is, I think we're foolish, because I think there's stuff going on around us all the time. We just don't notice it.
Right. Well, and they say children can see certain things that we can't because they have more of an open mind. And they say, even people that are mediums that claim to speak with people who have passed on, they have to have an open mind to it. If you have a closed mind, you're really not going to be able to see, hear, or really get a feel for any of this. Right. I agree with that. So what about the other members of the team? Are they still skeptics, or have they all seen enough now to convince them that some type of paranormal energy is real? Or are you guys all kind of like on the same page as far as being kind of skeptics? No, we're all skeptics, but I think we're all different levels of skeptics. Angela is probably the biggest skeptic. And when she started this project, she started truly as a filmmaker with no beliefs or necessarily interest in this topic. And from being involved after all these years, she's really come to realize that, yeah, there probably is something else out there. Michael's probably on the level where I am as far as skepticism, maybe a little bit more so. I have a belief system that actually does believe that mediums and things like that can feel a little bit more than the average person, maybe know a little bit more than the average person. He tends to shy away from believing that kind of stuff. And Anne is she's still a skeptic, very much so. I think she has a deeper connection sometimes with energies around her. Right. Just on a daily basis. So we're all skeptics. We're all believers. It just depends on where we're at with the needle. We're all a little bit in a different spot. So they're like you in the sense when something does happen, they try to rationalize it or reason it through science that it's something else before they say, okay. Yeah, absolutely. If you're sitting there and a door closes, first thing you're going to think of is wind. Obviously, wind or something closed it, what have you. Right. Sometimes you can't come up with a reason why it happened. Wow. Well, I'm interested in the equipment, and I know a lot of people who watch the show are probably curious about the equipment. Now, there are several pieces of equipment used by you guys use as a team. I'd like to ask you about a few of them. Sure. Let's start with that K2 device. What does that do? All right. That measures electromagnetic field, and basically that meter measures electricity in the air. I'll put it at simple terms. If you took that piece of equipment and put it up to a breaker box or an old fuse box in a home that wasn't well grounded, that type of thing, that thing would be going off the charts. Okay. So that's always something to keep in mind. If you're doing an investigation with one of those,
and the levels are there, the lights are lit, but they're kind of steady, you're probably getting something atmospheric from the building itself. But
Okay.
electromagnetic field is what it measures. And there are some thought processes on why that's important. Some people believe that areas that have very high very high EMF can actually fuel paranormal activity. That's one thought process. And another is that spirits or energy can take that energy or other energy and use it to help manipulate or show themselves, that kind of thing. So there's a couple of different thought processes.
Okay. And the thermal camera is pretty self-explanatory. That's just a camera that shows you different temperatures?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so that's... And what about the Mel meter? We've heard that talked about on the show. What is that?
That's cool because that shows EMF, but it also shows temperature. So if you're in a situation where, let's say you do see some EMF on that meter, and then all of a sudden there's a drop in temperature or a spike in temperature,
Okay.
it just gives you an opportunity to kind of note that in two ways instead of just one.
Okay, now the thing that fascinates me the most is that, I guess you call it like a radio frequency scanner, that thing that makes those weird, almost like you're changing channels on a radio that picks up voices and stuff?
The SP7 is the
SP7,
technical name
okay.
for it. Yeah, and basically that is exactly what it is. It's a radio that skims through the channels very quickly, and again, there's some thought process that that energy or spirits can manipulate that in order to communicate with the people trying to communicate with them.
Is that what's known as the white noise phenomenon?
That exactly. That
Okay.
part of that, and also. Lloyd Auerbach, who is a gentleman that we work with, a very well-known scientist that we actually go to talk to about some of the questions we have about paranormal research, has actually said to us that he's had instances, or there's been reports of instances, where somebody's got an EVP, which is an electronic voice phenomenon, on a piece of equipment. Well, that could be on tape. It could be a recording devices. You could listen back to this interview tonight on your equipment and find an EVP, a voice that wasn't there before.
All right, now you're scaring me, Todd.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me expound on that a little bit. But Lloyd actually told us that there were stories in the 70s where people took old cassette magnetic tapes that were sealed. They bought them at a grocery store, at a Walgreens or something, put them in a location in a house, not in a machine, but just laid them there, and actually got EVPs on the tape because the energy was able to manipulate onto it. But you talk about audio. I live in the audio world because I live in work in radio. You live in the audio world because of your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing for me. When I hear something on a recording that wasn't there when we were there, that says something to me. Because I use the software every day. I record commercials and radio shows and all that.
Right.
And I know what it sounds like. So when something's there that wasn't there, that's pretty interesting to me.
So why would something go to like a recorder, like an EVP, and you can hear it when you play it back, but you wouldn't hear it through that scanner?
Well, again, I think the thing that we have to understand is not every energy, not every spirit is going to be able to communicate the same way.
Okay.
Some people communicate through speech. Some people communicate by writing while they're alive. I think we have to understand that these are all devices that we hope we can use to communicate in some way, shape, or form. But when you die, you don't automatically learn how to move objects, or you don't automatically learn to talk so that it's audible. These are all things. These are just tools that we hope will allow us to get some sort of communication with energies or spirits, that kind of thing.
It's kind of like go ahead, Todd. I'm sorry.
Well, I think that's something that we actually learned as a group over the last year too. Is you have the things that you typically use, the ones that you feel comfortable using in trying to communicate. Sometimes they don't work, and all of a sudden something that you hadn't even thought of does work. And so we have to be open to understand that we don't control that situation.
Right.
It's controlled for us. So,
like when you said that certain spirit energy can't move objects. It's like that movie Ghost when Patrick Swayze passed, and then he was being trained by the other spirit down in the subway system of New York City, how to kick the soda can, how to move objects. Maybe it takes a while. We don't know, right?
Absolutely. And Lloyd Auerbach talks a lot about psychokinesis and the ability to move things and turn things on and turn things off. Unless you have psychokinesis as a human, you probably don't have it when you're gone. So it's something that if you're going to be able to use that as a way to communicate, you're going to have to learn. Right.
Well, let's go, Todd, from the audio to the visual. Now, can you explain to the listeners what an orb is?
Well, yeah. Again, a lot of people have different thought processes and descriptions for it. I'll give you my description.
Sure.
An orb is a form of energy of some sort. There is energy around us all the time, whether it's heat, whether it's cold. And an orb to me is energy that shows up in some sort of visual recording that usually takes the form of like a ball or a roundish object that floats through the air in various ways. Other people can put it more scientifically for you, but to me, that's really what an orb is. People will say, well, is that a spirit? I can't say that it's a spirit, but I can say that if it's a true orb and it's been recorded, that it probably is some sort of energy movement in that area.
Right. And they can't be seen with the naked eye, only through recording devices?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I know orbs all too well, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yes.
Have you ever, on one of these investigations, been really scared or uncomfortable with a spirit energy? And if so, how did you get through that?
I'll go back to our first episode this year. This is the first time it's really happened to me. I've had things happen where I've said, holy crap. And literally had to step back and go, did that just happen? Because I can't believe it just did. This investigation, we were on Washington Island, which is just off Door County, and it's an island of about 700 people that live there year-round. So it's very small. It's a very small-knit community. To get there, you've got to take a ferry. And in the winter months in Wisconsin, there's only two ferries, one in the morning, one at night. So if you want to get on or off, that's the only time you can go.
You better not be late.
Exactly. A lot of limestone there, a lot of water around it. There's some thought process as to how nature can play a role in paranormal investigations and just paranormal stuff in general. But I shared this on another podcast this week, and that was when we were there. This has never really happened before, but for some of us, there was this constant feeling that we weren't alone.
Okay.
Even when we weren't investigating, even when we were hanging out at the cottage or going off doing something else, we just never felt quite like we were alone. Each of us had an interesting experience while we were there, some to varying degrees. I ended up, when we came back to the mainland, I ended up coming back with a very, very dark, I guess I would say, feeling for a long time. And when I say for a long time, it stuck with me for like 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
And I wouldn't say that I was scared, but I was very, very concerned about how dark my moods had gotten after that.
Okay.
And so it really made me think about, what we do and how we do and all that kind of stuff, which is an important thing to do anyway when you're doing this kind of work. But that was the only time where I really felt not necessarily scared, but just a little uneasy about what we may have brought back with us.
Okay. Now, can you tell right away if an energy is positive or negative?
I don't think you can. And I think the other thing to understand is, you could have just a fine communication with something, and they say their name is Lisa, and they were 42 years old when they died, or whatever. You don't really know what you're communicating with.
Right.
You don't know the type of energy that you're dealing with. And I think that, again, in our world, we know when something feels soft and when something feels hard, when something feels cold, when something feels hot. I don't know that we have the ability to understand all of that in another way quite yet. Okay. And so you get the feeling that something may be good, you still have to be careful. If you get an off feeling, you got to be really careful.
Right. Well, Michael makes me nervous sometimes, I got to say. I love the show. I love all four of you guys, but one episode he got frustrated and called the spirit a dick or something.
Yeah.
And I said, are you out of your mind? Something's going to come out of that wall or something. I was like cringe. I was like, I cannot believe. There's no way I would do that. I would be the nicest guy in the world.
Well, it's interesting because if you've seen the earlier episode, the movies actually,
Mm-hmm.
Michael was a little bit even more out there.
Right.
And he had an experience, I think it was in the first movie, where something followed him home.
Oh, wow.
For a few days, and it was not a good situation. And I think, again, just like anything in life, you learn as you get older and you go through some of this stuff more and more. I think he's learned a little bit more about his investigation style has changed a lot. But yeah, and sometimes you need to walk away, because sometimes you are in the middle of something and the energy's there and you're feeling really pumped up about it. Sometimes you need to be able to walk away and just kind of let that all kind of release.
Now, have you ever felt a drastic temperature change while you're in a room when you're doing investigations?
I'll be honest. Excuse me. I haven't.
Okay.
And I think that the reason why is because of my skepticism. In my mind, that's got to be some sort of just air change, whether it's an air conditioner or just air movement, whatever. I guess I've never truly paid close enough attention to it. Now, if I'm using the Mel meter and I see it happen,
sure,
I'm usually a little bit more apt to then recognize that some sort of change has happened in that area.
What about being touched by something?
There's this story about how sometimes people think that if you're touched by energy or a ghost or a spirit, that it feels like spider webs. I hear this like all the time. People say that. I think I don't know that I've ever been touched.
Okay.
I do think, like in the situation where I came back from an investigation, feeling different. I think something had kind of latched onto me.
Okay.
Feeling a touch, no. Feeling like something was with you.
Sure. That's got to feel, even for me, just feeling something with you. It's got to be, a touch can be done in a second, but feeling something for weeks at a time has to be unnerving.
Well, earlier that year, before we went investigating, I lost my mom.
Okay.
And my family, I've got two sisters, and one lives in Texas and one lives here in Wisconsin. We're not big believers in what I did, as far as going out and investigating and questioning paranormal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, when my mom passed away, we all had some pretty interesting and very related things that happened to us.
Oh, wow.
Over the period of like 2 weeks. And I know that they're believers now.
That's good.
That. But yeah, and I think when you do lose somebody that closely, sometimes that allows you to be maybe a little bit more susceptible to other things going on in that realm. And so I think that may have had something to do with it as well.
Now, let's talk about the video I sent you. I know you had seen it about a year ago, and I resent it to you. Let me give the listeners some background, because I'm going to post the video with my wife's permission, of course, because she's in the video. This happened in April of 18 of last year, and a dog I had for 15 years. It was the night before we had to put him down. He got stricken with cancer, and we had one final great weekend with him. They gave us medicine to sustain him through the weekend. And this was video was taken on a Sunday night into early Monday morning, and that Monday, later in the morning, he was going to be put down and pass on. And when we went up the stairs to bed with him that night, he was normally a sound sleeper. He kept getting up all night and going to the staircase and looking at it. And his eyes were just looking up and down the staircase and on the walls. And he was acting very strangely. He kept getting up and this wasn't like him. And I know maybe because he was on medication or he was sick that maybe his behavior changed. Right. So I didn't think anything of it, Todd. And I never check our security cameras. We have them outside. We have a couple inside. I never really check them. Something told me to check the camera footage, the security footage from that night. And boy, was I shocked when I checked that footage. Now, what do you think you see in that based on your experience, Todd? What do you think that is?
Well, I got to back up just a little bit because I watched this without the preface. I knew that there was a story with your dog passing, but I didn't realize that he had spent as much time necessarily looking at that staircase.
Yes.
And the reason why that was kind of exciting to me was because when I watched this video, there's a staircase on the right-hand side. Your wife walks down. And now what's directly above where this camera is? Is there a landing there, or is that a wall on the second floor?
That is like a half wall, and then it becomes the top, very top of the landing that goes into the bedroom.
Okay. So what I see is I see her come down the stairs, and as she turns the corner from the stairs, what looks to me like some sort of orb or even like an ectoplasm or something like that
Okay.
kind of flies toward that staircase.
Right.
And it's very pronounced. It doesn't look like, it's not a bug, that's for sure. I don't
Right.
even know what it is. It reminds me of that silly string that people spray.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's what it looks like. And then right after that, there's a bunch of what seem to be orbs that kind of swing around and fly around
Right.
and then kind of come to the ground. And again, could it be dust? It's possible that some of that is dust. Could it be bugs? It doesn't look like bugs to me because bugs have a specific shape
Right.
when they're flying. You can almost see their wings. But that little squiggly line that goes flying at
That's the thing that got me.
let me ask you this. Let me ask a question of you. When you first saw that, knowing everything that you went through, and you checked this footage out, and you saw that for the first time, what did you think?
Well, I saw the orbs, and I knew what an orb was based on, my interest in this kind of stuff before that. And I didn't think too much of it. I said, okay, maybe it's dust. But when that weird thing flew down, I noticed something go by really quickly. But then when I went frame by frame very slowly, where you can see a fraction of a second at a time, it almost looked like a winged, something like a flying winged, I don't want to say creature because it didn't look scary or anything. But what's weird about it is that when it flew from top to bottom, it changed form. And then if you look really closely at the video, it changes form almost like like it puffs out orbs. Like it changes from this flying thing. When it gets to the bottom of the stairs, you see this puff of energy, and it dissipates into the foyer. And that's what really... Now, my first thought was, obviously dust or something. But when I kept looking at this and I showed it to friends, everybody was kind of freaked out about it. Now, my only explanation for it is that, the dog was with us so long, and maybe some past relatives that I had were coming to greet the dog and help him cross over or something that morning. I mean, that's what I like to think, but it could be anything.
It's interesting because when my mom was passing away, she spent time in her home. She was able to pass away in her house. And my cousin, who was a hospice nurse for her entire life, stayed with my mom.
Okay.
And the last few days of her time, as she was passing away, she told stories of talking to all of her past family members.
Sure.
And so that comes to mind as well. But I remember this footage because I remember our mutual friend Benji sent it to me. And I'm like, wow, that's really, really cool. And now to get the additional story about the dog looking at
the staircase,
the staircase, that's awesome.
And what's weird, Todd, is normally I'd be scared of something like this if, seeing something in my house. But I really wasn't scared because I didn't think it was anything, evil or bad. I was accepting of it, and I just moved on after that. Normally, I think if I thought it was something bad, I probably would have moved already.
Charlie done burned down the house.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
and that's the other thing too is we see the movies like Amityville Horror and stuff like that. Everything's negative and all that kind of stuff. Are there negative energies out there? Yes. Just like there's negative people giving off energy their entire life. That's where the energy comes
That's what half this podcast is, negative energy.
I've listened to your show. I think we have to just understand that this isn't, nasty, evil stuff half the time, more than half the time. A lot of times it's just the residual energy of people who've lived their lives and worked hard and been a part of the world we currently live in.
Right.
So.
Well, that we spoke a little bit before about, the instrumentation you guys use and, white noise. Now, I had an experience when I was 15, Todd. I was very close with my mother's father, my grandfather on my mom's side. I'm even named after him, my first and middle name. We were inseparable. We went everywhere together. He was like a second father to me. My dad worked a lot. Everything I did was with my grandfather. Now, he passed away when I was 15. And about a week after he passed, I was at his house. My brother, sister, and mom were there having lunch. And my sister and my mom and my brother left the house. I don't know where they went, but they left the house. I was in we were at my grandfather's house cleaning it up, and I was there alone. And now, back then, there were no cell phones or pagers. It was just a wall phone, one of those rotary wall phones.
The best, yes.
I'm cleaning up the lunch dishes. The phone on the wall rings, the old bell, loud bell. So I answered the phone. And it was very staticky, like it was like a call from another part of the world back then when the long distance, you could tell it was like a long distance line. It was very staticky. And my grandfather's voice came on the line and said, "Charlie." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "I'm just calling to say goodbye." And then the phone just cut out, and that was it. And I stood there shaking because I knew that was my grandfather's voice. I knew it wasn't a wrong number. They didn't call back. I stood there like shaking for 10 minutes because I knew that was him. He was trying to. Now, do you think that he was in that room with me and just using that phone as a communication device, or was he somewhere else?
Well, I think your guess is as good as mine. I think that he's always with you.
Right.
And, I think when we pass, I think this is my personal thought process on it. I think our energies are no longer trapped within our human bodies, and I think that we can be everywhere and anywhere at any given time. So more than likely he's with you now. More than likely he was able to manipulate that telephone to tell you something that he wanted to tell you.
Right.
So I think that's awesome. And it's cool too because I don't know if Benji shared the audio of my dad's phone with you as well.
I believe he did.
But, yeah, it was very strange because after my mom passed away, my father had some audio with a phone and all that kind of stuff. And the words at the very end of the recording were, "I'll be back."
Wow.
It did not sound like my mother. But again, who's to say what we really sound like? That was our human body. We don't know what she sounds like now. But it's cool how something as simple as a phone in the kitchen can help you communicate with somebody that you love.
Yeah, it was that's what made me. I was a skeptic before that, and I guess in certain ways I still am, like you.
Sure.
But that really made me believe that, like when I would hear a story about somebody saying they, a past, a relative that passed on got in touch with them in some way, I didn't dismiss it right away because I knew that the same type of experience happened to me. So I'm more open-minded to it.
Right.
But I wanted to also mention that. About 12 years ago, a certain time of the day comes up twice, once in the morning, once at night. Obviously, they say a blind pig, what's that expression? Even somebody is right twice a day, or even an idiot's right twice a day or something.
Something like that, yeah.
But starting about 12 years ago, every single morning, I would look at the clock. At some point, it was 11:17 a.m. And even at night, whether I was in a dead sleep, I would wake up and look at the clock, and it was 11:17. To this day, every single night, I could go to bed at 10 o'clock. I have one of those laser alarm clocks that shoot on the ceiling because I don't want to fumble for a phone. I like to see the time anytime I wake up. No matter what time I go to bed or sleep, I'll wake up and I'll look at that, and it's 11:17. And every morning, without fail, I will not miss looking at the clock at 11:17. And I'm not a clock watcher. Now, this happened about 12 years ago it started. Then a very good friend of mine died on November 17th of 08, 11:17. I'm curious if that was like a sign that he was going to pass on that day, and now it's very strange to me, but I never miss 11:17.
It is strange, and that's weird too because I tend to get double numbers a lot. It started probably about a year ago, or about the time that we were investigating for the series, and I got a lot of 333s, a lot of 333s.
Wow.
But it has, and it happens in the middle of the night sometimes, but more so during the day. But I do think there are signs out there. There's messages coming through. Sometimes we don't understand them.
Right.
I've always heard good things about getting messages with numbers. It's interesting that you lost somebody with those numbers, though.
Yeah, but it's just odd to me that I started actually seeing that time like a couple of years before he passed, and maybe it was just a premonition that he was going to pass on that day, and now it's just a reminder. I don't know what it is, but it's just odd because there's no other time of the day that I always happen to look at the clock and see that time without fail.
That's cool. I thought I was the only one doing that.
No, and then you're a music guy too. You like
well, not as much as you. Holy crap!
Now, I told this story on my Halloween episode, and this is something that's kind of like the 11/17. When my grandfather, who I spoke of, communicated with me, who I believe communicated with me through that phone, was sick in the hospital. He had colon cancer. We would visit him, almost every day. We would get in the car and go visit him. This was in the spring of '87, and that song by Crowded House, "Don't Dream It's Over," was really popular on the charts. Every time, Todd, we got in that car to see my grandfather, we would turn on the radio, and "Don't Dream It's Over" by Crowded House was on that radio. So we didn't think anything of it as kids. It was a popular song, but every single time we went to the hospital, back from the hospital, we heard that song. Never thought anything of it. Right. Years later, long after my grandfather passed, we was at a holiday dinner, and I told my mom this story. I said, it was my mom's father. I said, every time we got in the car to see Grandpa, that song was on, no matter who I was with. And my mother looked at me and said, "Do you know that was the song on the radio when he passed in this hospital room?" And I said, "Holy shit!" So it was like a premonition of that too. It was like it's very odd.
I just stories like this. It's like you got to step back. If you're a black and white person and you only see those two colors, you got to step back and go, the world is a little gray sometimes.
Right.
And we have to, I think we need to embrace that and accept it a little bit, because I think when we do finally pass away, I think we'll be surprised at how much we really didn't know.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
I hope there's something else after this, or else we got pretty gypped, I think. That's what I always say. If this is it, Todd,
I agree with you.
If waiting online at the supermarket behind some lady writing a check is all there is, we got gypped.
That's why I go through the self-checkout. I don't deal with that.
So, like we spoke about, like maybe taking on different energy and everything. What I never understood was like a lot of these places that you guys go to, like the Nelson's Bitters place, things like that, the Lighthouse. Why would if I could travel to any dimension as a spirit or energy, why would I stay in the same places that I, lived in or worked in? Wouldn't I want to get around? That's the part of the spirit world I don't understand.
I agree, but I think that you're assuming that you stay in one place. You're assuming that your energy just stays in one place and doesn't splatter and go everywhere. I think that on a daily basis, the things we do and the way we treat people and the actions we take on a daily basis, I think we imprint our energy wherever we are. If it's something we're very passionate about, we imprint our energy. You make a difference in someone's life, they remember that, whether it's good or bad. So your energy sticks around even in that way. People say, well, the graveyard's haunted. Well, who'd want to stick around their grave? Same thing. I think we're short-sighted if we think that our energy when we're gone can be in one place at a time. I think it could be many places at one time.
Yeah, that's something I always wondered. Like people say, "Oh, I didn't make it to the wake," and "Oh, Aunt Mary's going to be mad." Why would Aunt Mary be at her own wake? Things like. I think there was a Seinfeld episode about that or something.
She's hanging out in the corner, wanting to know who comes by.
Exactly, taking it with a pad and pen.
Right.
So, Todd, now that you're an established, investigator, you're part of the Haunted State series. Do you notice that friends or people want you to come over their house and with your equipment, and do you get friends that ask you for favors to make sure the house isn't, or anything like that? Are you the go-to guy now?
I get a lot of video and pictures and stuff like that. The thing that I like is that most of my friends are people who are pretty open-minded about a lot of stuff in life. And so I've got some people, obviously, who are closed-minded, but the ones who are open-minded are always open for conversation. And I've had people send me a lot of video. In fact, just probably 2 nights ago, somebody sent me some stuff and said, "What do you think?" Okay. And one of the hardest things to do is go, "Yeah, well, that's a lens flare," or "Yeah, that's nothing. I don't think it's anything."
Right, but you got to be honest, right?
Got to be honest, but you also don't want to disappoint them in that. If they want to believe that their father is with them, then I want them to believe their father is with them in some way, shape, or form. If it gives them some sort of
comfort,
yeah,
right.
So, yeah, I mean, it happens every once in a while, but I typically am pretty blunt about it. Like, yeah, it's probably nothing.
Okay, well, that's the way to be. I mean,
Yeah. Like if I saw your video and I thought it was just dust, I would tell you.
Yeah, but Charlie, clean your house. Get the Swiffers out.
That's right.
So to wrap things up, I know you had a long day. I don't want to hold you too long, Todd. Now, there's 4 episodes so far of Haunted State. When is the next one coming out, and how many episodes are there going to be this season, and how often are they going to be released by Amazon?
Well, the next one's coming out second week of July.
Okay.
Look for episode 5. Should be a really good one. This one, the thing that's really cool about the next episode, it's at a place called Shipwrecked. It involves a lot of history and a lot of emotion. So
Okay.
this one's very kind of special. But I believe there's going to be 8 in the series.
8 in the series. Okay.
There may be a couple of extra ones at the end. We missed some stuff. So if you've seen the first 4 episodes, there's stuff in those that we missed when we went through investigating, and they've been brought to our attention, or we noticed them after the shows have been produced. And so we're going to try and wrap those up at the end of the season as well. And they're going to come out every 3 or 4 weeks. Michael Brown, who's the producer and director, made a really good point. When you buy a puzzle and sit down and you dump out the puzzle box and you start working on putting those pieces together, you've got a picture of what that puzzle looks like.
Right.
And in a case like this, when we're really trying to be honest about what we get and how we investigate, we don't have a formula. Each story is different.
Right.
Each episode is different because every trip there is different. Every unloading the vehicle is different. Every investigation is different. And the evidence is all different. Plus, the way it ties in with the individual people is different. So we don't have that picture. We've got the pieces, and they've got to be manipulated together to tell the right story.
Right.
And so it takes a little bit more time than just throwing together kind of a formulated thing. So I typically give them, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, somewhere in there, a new episode should be coming out.
And you also have a podcast.
Podcast, just started one a couple of weeks ago. Best thing to do for everything Haunted State is go to Facebook, search Haunted State. Our podcast is up there. Information about the docuseries as well, which you can also you can search on Amazon Prime. Just search for Haunted State, and it's there. But if you want to keep up to date with it, get our podcasts, get our little videos when we get together for production meetings, you can get that all on Facebook/Haunted State.
Well, Todd, I really appreciate it. We will have to have you on again to talk about something a little lighter, maybe some music or something like that. But this was a lot of fun.
I'll come to school one week on music. You can teach me everything you know.
Well, Todd, I appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners appreciate it, and lots of luck with the rest of the season of Haunted State. And listeners, be sure to, if you haven't checked it out, everybody has an Amazon Prime account. The video's included with that. Go to Amazon Prime Video on your phone, your tablet, your smart TV, and definitely check out Todd and the rest of the crew on Haunted State. Todd, thank you so much for taking the time out today.
Charlie, thanks a lot.
All right, it's been great. Thank you so much. I want to thank Todd once again. It was really a great conversation. What a really nice guy Todd is for taking the time out. And just I'd never spoken to Todd before, and that was the first time, and it felt like I knew him for years. He's just that kind of guy. I really enjoyed the conversation, and we hope to have him on again, if not about paranormal, but about music. Todd's a big music guy like me and Benji, who I had on the show. Maybe we can all get together and do a show together. So, Todd, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you're a busy guy with everything going on, and thank you for sitting down with us, and best of luck to you and the entire crew of Haunted State. I enjoy the show very much. And for the listeners out there, if you really want something to watch, I know it's not Halloween time and you're probably not in the paranormal mood, but I'm telling you, it'll be worth your while. Go to Amazon Prime Video on your device, whether it be your phone, your tablet, your smart TV, and check out Haunted State, the docuseries from this year, 2019. As of right now, there are 4 episodes out. A fifth one is coming out. I think Todd said the second week of July, and then there are 3 more to follow this year. It's definitely worth your while. I think it'll hold your interest. And whether you're a skeptic or not, folks, whether you're a believer in the paranormal or a skeptic, I think it will hold your interest. So thank you to Todd, and thanks to all of you once again for tuning in on this 4th of July holiday week. Now, next Monday, July 8th, there will not be a show. We're taking a week off. People coming off the holiday weekend, they're going to be getting back into their routine, so we're taking a week off. But we will be back on July 15th, 2 weeks, and I will be a year older, unfortunately. Well, it's good that I'm living another year, but you know what I mean. After all this paranormal talk, I don't really want to go anywhere anytime soon. But it's always, once you hit 40, I think, it's not that big of a deal, but every year you're just like, holy shit, another year went by. So I'll be a year older the next time you hear from me on July 15th. So we will, catch up then with a brand new topic. For those new listeners, well, you're probably wondering, I don't know how, some people find us on Facebook and different places. So where are we found? Well, we are found just about everywhere now. We're on Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Radio Public, Radio.com, CastBox, Stitcher, YouTube, or if you have an Amazon Echo device, just say, Alexa, play the podcast A Bunch of Malarkey, and she will play the latest episode for you. Now, as far as our Mutant of the Week, once again, we have a couple of heavyweights going at it this week, the Driveway Defecator and the Snake Smooch and Simpleton. You can vote. Our poll goes up on Tuesday early in the morning, and ends midday on Saturday. So you have 5 days to vote. Be sure to cast your vote. I know it's a holiday week, but get those votes in. The Driveway Defecator and the Snake Smooch and Simpleton. So be sure, if you enjoy the podcast, folks, to check out my book, A Whole Lot of Shenanigans. It's available on Amazon. Or if you'd like a signed copy, you can get that on eBay. I will sign it, personalize it, and get that out to you. So 2 ways to get my book, on Amazon or eBay. And just want to thank you all again for all your support with the show. It means a lot to me. We're coming up on our year anniversary. And for those of you that have been here from the beginning, or no matter when you join the show, I really appreciate it. So, folks, you not only have to beware of some possible paranormal activity around you, you have to beware of all the mutants around us. And why do you have to beware? Well, that's simple, because it's a shit show out there. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been A Bunch of Malarkey, and we'll talk to you on the 15th of July. Take care, everybody.